the south for some years as the most masterly of male coachmen. He was the man in all Europe that could best have undertaken to drive 6 in hand full gallop over Al Sirat, that famous bridge of Mahomet, across the bottomless gulf, backing himself against the Prophet and 20 such fellows. I used to call him Cyclops Mastigophorus, Cyclops the whip-bearer, until I observed that his skill made whips useless except to fetch off an impertinent fly from a leader's head, upon which I changed his Grecian name to Cyclops Diphrelates, Cyclops the charioteer. I, and others known to me, studied under him the Diphrelatic art. Excuse, reader, a word too elegant to be pedantic, and also take this remark from me, as a gage d'amitié, that no word ever was or can be pedantic which, by supporting a distinction, supports the accuracy of logic, or which fills up a chasm for the understanding. As a pupil, though I paid extra fees, I cannot say that I stood high in his esteem. It showed his dogged honesty, though observe, not his discernment, that he could not see my merits. Perhaps we ought to excuse his absurdity in this particular, by remembering his want of an eye. That made him blind to my merits. Irritating as this blindness was, surely it could not be envy. He always courted my conversation, in which art I certainly had the whip-hand of him. On this occasion great joy was at our meeting. But what was Cyclops doing here? Had the medical men recommended northern air, or how? I collected, from such explanations as he volunteered, that he had an interest at stake in a suit at law pending at Lancaster, so that probably he had got himself transferred to the station for the purpose of connecting with his professional pursuits, an instant readiness for the calls of his lawsuit. Meantime, what are we stopping for? Surely we've been waiting long enough. Oh, this procrastinating mail, and oh, this procrastinating post office. Can't they take a lesson upon that subject from me? Some people have called me procrastinating. Now you are witness, reader, that I was in time for them. But can they lay their hands on their hearts and say that they were in time for me? I, during my life, have often had to wait for the post office. The post office never waited a minute for me. What are they about? The guard tells me that there is a large extra accumulation of foreign mails this night, owing to irregularities caused by war in the packet service, when as yet nothing is done by steam. For an extra hour, it seems, the post office has been engaged in threshing out the pure wheaten correspondence of Glasgow, and winnowing it from the chaff of all baser intermediate towns. We can hear the flails going at this moment, but at last all is finished. Sound your horn, guard. Manchester, goodbye. We've lost an hour by your criminal conduct at the post office, which, however, though I do not mean to part with a serviceable ground of complaint, and one which really is such for the horses, to me, secretly, is an advantage, since it compels us to recover this last hour amongst the next 8 or 9. Off we are at last, and at 11 miles an hour, and at first I detect no changes in the energy or in the skill of Cyclops. From Manchester to Kendal, which virtually, though not in law, is the capital of Westmoreland, were at this time 7 stages of 11 miles each. The first 5 of these, dated from Manchester, terminated in Lancaster, which was therefore 55 miles north of Manchester, and the same distance exactly from Liverpool. The first 3 terminated in Preston, called by the way of distinction from the other towns of that name, Proud Preston, at which place it was that the separate roads from Liverpool and from Manchester to the north became confluent. Within these first 3 stages lay the foundation, the progress, and the termination of our night's adventure. During the first stage I found out that Cyclops was mortal. He was liable to the shocking affection of sleep, a thing which I had never previously suspected. If a man is addicted to the vicious habit of sleeping, all the skill and arrogation of Apollo himself, with the horses of Aurora to execute the motions of his will, avail him nothing. "O Cyclops!" I exclaimed more than once. "Cyclops, my friend, thou art mortal, thou snorest." Through this first 11 miles, however, he betrayed his infirmity, which I grieve to say he shared with the whole pagan pantheon, only by short stretches. On waking up, he made an apology for himself, which, instead of mending the matter, laid an ominous foundation for coming disasters. The summer assizes were now proceeding at Lancaster, in consequence of which, for 3 nights and 3 days, he had not lain down in a bed. During the day he was waiting for his uncertain summons as a witness on the trial in which he was interested, or he was drinking with the other witnesses under the vigilant surveillance of the attorneys. During the night, or that part of it when the least temptation existed to conviviality, he was driving. Throughout the second stage he grew more and more drowsy. In the second mile of the third stage he surrendered himself, finally, and without a struggle, to his perilous temptation. All his past resistance had but deepened the weight of his final oppression. 7 atmospheres of sleep seemed resting upon him, and, to consummate the case, our worthy guard, after singing Love Against the Roses for the 50th or 60th time, without any invitation from Cyclops or myself, and without applause for his poor labours, had moodily resigned himself to slumber, not so deep, doubtless, as the coachman's, but deep enough for mischief, and having probably no similar excuse. And thus, at last, about 10 miles from Preston, I found myself left in charge of His Majesty's London and Glasgow mail, then running about 11 miles an hour. What made this negligence less criminal than else it must have been thought was the condition of the roads at night during the assizes. At that time all the law business of populous Liverpool and of populous Manchester, with its vast cincture of populous rural districts, was called up by ancient uses to the tribunal of Lilliputian Lancaster. To break up this old traditional usage required a conflict with powerful established interests, a large system of new arrangements, and a new parliamentary statute. As things were at present, twice in the year so vast a body of business rolled northward from the southern quarter of the country, that a fortnight at least occupied the severe exertions of 2 judges for its dispatch. The consequence of this was, that every horse available for such a service along the whole line of road was exhausted in carrying down the multitudes of people who were parties to the different suits. By sunset, therefore, it usually happened that, through utter exhaustion amongst the men and horses, the roads were all silent, except exhaustion in the vast adjacent county of York from a contested election. Nothing like it was ordinarily witnessed in England. On this occasion the usual silence and solitude prevailed along the road. Not a hoof nor a wheel was to be heard, and to strengthen this false luxurious confidence in the noiseless roads, it happened also that the night was one of peculiar solemnity and peace. I myself, though slightly alive to the possibilities of peril, had so far yielded to the influence of the mighty calm as to sink into a profound reverie. The month was August, in which lay my own birthday, a festival to every thoughtful man, suggesting solemn and often sigh-born thoughts. The county was my own native county, upon which, in its southern section, more than upon any equal area known to man, past or present, had descended the original curse of labour in its heaviest form, not mastering the bodies of men only as of slaves or criminals in mines, but working through the fiery will. Upon no equal space of earth was, or ever had been, the same energy of human power put forth daily. At this particular season also of the assizes, that dreadful hurricane of flight and pursuit, as it might have seemed to a stranger, that swept to and from Lancaster all day long, hunting the county up and down, and regularly subsiding about sunset, united with the permanent distinction of Lancashire as the very metropolis and citadel of labour, to point the thoughts pathetically upon that counter-vision of rest, of saintly repose from strife and sorrow, towards which, as to their secret haven, the profounder aspirations of man's heart are continually travelling. Obliquely we were nearing the sea upon our left, which also must, under the present circumstances, be repeating the general state of halcyon repose. The sea, the atmosphere, the light, bore an orchestral part in this universal lull. Moonlight, in the first timid tremblings of the